So, my colleagues on the dais and all the delegates, very good morning. There cannot be any right time for this conference, Praveen, with the Honorable Prime Minister announcing the National Logistic Policy only a couple of days back. I'm not going to cover all those points, but fundamentally I'm going to talk about very practical issues which we face, and probably taking over from Ravi where he stopped and taking it forward over there. Because there are stakeholders, all of us sitting here are stakeholders into this. And while we talk about the responsibility of every other stakeholders, I would like to talk about what are the responsibilities or roles of each and every one of the stakeholders sitting out here. And that is what probably I will just cover in next few minutes. So if you see the logistics, if you see there are the major key stakeholders, of course the manufacturers, then you are talking about the transporters, the logistic providers. Third, another important is the ports, roads, railways, all the infrastructure suppliers, infrastructure providers. And the fourth and a very important part of the infrastructure, part of the logistic ecosystem is the warehousing. I'll talk about each and every of these key stakeholders. Where are the gaps which we find on an operational basis when we really work on the logistics, and what are the things which each one of us can do? And these are things which are not really difficult. These are things not you require huge, what can I say, interventions from government and other things. It is basically, it is within you as a particular stakeholder. I'll just take those points one after another, because finally at the end of the day, we have to look at not only efficient logistics, we have to look at very safe logistics as well. So if you talk about the first stakeholder, that is a goods manufacturing industry. Now, first of all, if you talk about SMEs or MSMEs, there is no logistic as a function within their SCM team. Many times the promoter, the CEO, he knows kahan se raw material aa raha hai, kahan ja raha hai. He doesn't know how it is coming and how it is going. And basically that is one area where you need to have a dedicated team which understands the efficiency and the safety and other aspects of logistics and work around that. And that is where the next point comes in, that transportation safety, which has to be asked for from both, from your transporters, as I am talking from the behalf of manufacturers at this point in time, from your transporters, at the same time your internal partner, which are your marketing teams, because the marketing team also wants to satisfy customer. They are not bothered about which tanker material is going, which trucks material is going. If you give that say in their hands, you may find that they are not really working towards a safe logistics part of it. Another important thing is, which again Ravi talked about, is basically the kind of tankers, trucks which come to your factory. And out of sheer compulsion, out of sheer time pressures, we just accept those trucks and tankers which come to the factories and dispatch the material, which is something which and at a senior level, people like you have to take those stand that, yes, my customer, I will explain to my customer, I will stop my production, but I will not allow those kind of trucks and tankers to come into my factory to fill in with the more than 15 years of old trucks with tires which are not really good condition. Drivers do not have right kind of licenses. If you're transporting hazardous, doesn't have hazardous licenses, and there are hundreds of issues. I'm sure many of the manufacturers sitting here will understand those on a day-to-day basis. And for that, another important aspect is that when the tanker trucks come to the factory, in the large factories you see is that they stand there for hours together, or many times days together. And that is where, from the behalf of transporters, fundamentally you have to see how you can reduce the turnaround time of the transport, because it's also unsafe to have tankers, trucks, people movement within the factory for the longer time. So faster the trucks move from your factory, the better in terms of the efficiency of the logistics which come into play. The responsibility of manufacturers also towards the transporters, towards the drivers who come to the factories, to give them the right kind of conditions. And that is again an important aspect which many times transporters try to talk to the so-called managements of the companies, but no one listens to them. And that is another responsibility of the manufacturers to see that they get right kind of toilets or food and all the basic amenities. Another responsibility as a manufacturer is that giving right kind of training on a continual basis to your drivers or the cleaners who come to the factory for the defensive driving and making them aware of what is a safe logistic means. I think these are some of the things which are very important. And from the company perspective, the cost is important. But try to reward those transporters who are compliant, who are going by the rules of the roads which are there in the industry, and at the same time, you can give them, or also automation, another part which we talk about it, have better automation which is there, give them better rates, give them preferences so that they also get encouraged to invest into some of these things. And the last but not least is the learning from global practices. If you see globally how the transportation happens, for example, chlorine. India is probably one of those countries where the chlorine is transported into the tonners, whereas globally you won't find chlorine getting transported into tonners. You have very efficient railway system which carries the chlorine into it. Yeah. The second part is basically the transporters, the logistic providers. Now, the most important aspect of the transportation is that you have to recognize transportation is not merely moving from point A to point B, and that is where responsibility of the transporter ends. It is basically the safety of material, safety of the drivers, and the community around the route is something which is a responsibility of each and every transporter who is getting into or lifting the material. Understand the characteristics of the products we are using. I have seen transporters or trucks on one way will carry mangoes or the grain, and other way transport the chemicals. I'm not sure whether how the drivers will understand how to handle mangoes and grains and how to handle chemicals. So that is the apathy which is shown towards the product which the transporters are actually carrying. Another important aspect is that give better working conditions to drivers. Some of the large carriers are going towards that direction, but unfortunately, I don't think most of the transporters are going to that directions. Treat your drivers, cleaners as employees. In the logistic office, the employees which are there, are you treating your drivers the same way? And the unfortunate answer in most of the places is no. So basically, whether it is a work-life balance, whether it is looking at his fatigue levels, health, his habits, again, these are things which the transport, and what I'm talking about these things, these are something which is in our hand. While we talk about what government has to do and everyone else has to do, these are something which, as a stakeholder, it is very much in our hand to make the changes in the lives of our drivers or any other things. Investment automation, we have been talking about it. There's a lot one can do in the automation areas, vehicle tracking, and other things from the safety and the efficiency perspective. Better maintained vehicles definitely give a good ROI on long-term basis. So these things, some of the things you feel the cost increases, but at the end of the day, it is going to give you a better benefit. And the compliance, there is no compromise on compliance from the manufacturer side as well as from the transporter side. We know the gaps into government and other projects here, which is again another big stakeholder. Multimodal transportation, we have been talking about it, and I hope the current policy, if executed well, will take care of some of those aspects. Another important issue which many times exporters face is the storage facilities, the godowns, and the tanks for the liquid cargo at the port, which are not sufficient. And again, the integrated port management will not only the facilities within the port, but outside the port in terms of approach roads, in terms of the storage, and all those things, that will really help us going forward. India has a huge coastal part. Again, if you see the west to south movement or east to movement, east-west movement, we are not really using. In India, probably under 5% is the waterways utilization in terms of logistics. So that is a huge scope for us in terms of the coastal movement as well as the river movements. Underutilization of major ports is because most of the times the lack of infrastructure around the ports, that makes a lot of difference. Safer roads and roadside infrastructure for transporters. Again, from the side of the transporters, the transportation, drivers, parking, other things, we don't have enough infrastructure around the roads. And that is something which, again, is an important gap which needs to be fulfilled. And as, again, earlier speakers talked of, the kind of a coordinated efforts between the various authorities, that is again something which is a missing area, and use of digital avenues, whether it is AI or ML, all those aspects can be used to ensure that there is an integrated approach between the road transportation, rail, and other this thing. Another area which is again not looked at in a big way into India is again the transportation by pipelines for chemicals. Even within the industrial zone like MIDCs and this thing, we don't find enough infrastructure for pipelines, enough motivation for the companies to have pipelines, or there are not really a right kind of, I would say, rules and regulations for the underground pipelines, because that is one of the, again, for the most of the chemicals, one of the safest ways of transportations. That is again the area where the governments can help us as an industry. Another important aspect is warehousing, and warehousing is a very critical component which connects the customers on one side and the manufacturer on other sides. But again, warehousing, I find that if you see the storage godowns around the cities, whether in Mumbai or Delhi or any other places, many times the landlords feel that having a land is good enough as a logistic warehouse. Just char walls dal do, upar chappar dal do, then that becomes a logistic warehouse. I think that is something which we have to move away from that. Understand what kind of infrastructure required for the safe keeping of the chemicals, whether it is drum, this thing, how we can segregate those, how should be packing, repacking done, if there is any spillage, there is an accident, how it has to be handled. All those aspects are part of the storage and logistics this thing, and unfortunately that is one area where we are not really, it is a lucrative business, but you also need to invest in that business so that the large companies, other companies who value that will definitely be a part of your logistic this thing. And there is a whole, I would say, opportunity in that space. Again, automation is again missing over there, whether invoicing, then stock records, safety, and all those things. There are a lot of things which are there, very clearly those are the gaps. And I think those are the areas where all of us as the stakeholders can work on. So what are the opportunities and way ahead? So each of these gap areas, what we talked of, is providing the opportunity for stakeholders as well as the other associated industries to expand the overall size of the logistic pie. And at the same time, it helps to reduce the cost of logistics. We are talking of 4.5 to 5% of the logistics which is higher in India. It's a huge money we are talking of, which can be between all the stakeholders. And at the same time, it is profitable overall in terms of as you reach to the ultimate consumers. Again, investment in the digitization, which will help you to improve reliability of operations, reduce wastages, and help safer and faster transportation. Benchmarking, as I talked of, the global standards is very important. And for that, we need to develop those additional skills. And that is where, again, as the owners, as the promoters of all these manufacturing companies or logistic product companies, we need to take initiative in terms of skill development in those areas. Overall reduction in transportation time is a saving, but overall the capital blockage is very important. Say, for example, if the average turnaround time of a cargo which goes out of India at the ports is around 2.5 days in India, whereas globally it is around 1.25. Now, if you talk of 1 day of saving of that turnaround time for billions of dollars of material, you are talking of how much money gets unlocked into the system. And the numbers are really huge, and I think that is where all of us have to really be considerate about this. Multimodal transport is something which we talked of. So fundamentally, the way forward is nothing but all the stakeholders must come together rather than looking at their own individual part of it. All of us have to sit together to see that how we can improve the entire chain and benefit for each and every part of the chain, at the same time reducing the logistics cost and increasing the productivity of the overall business. So that's it from me. Thank you very much.